The words scam and YouTuber go together like peanut butter and jelly. Usually, when you see these two words in the same sentence together, it indicates that a YouTuber is the one doing the scamming. But today, I've got a goofy little sad story for you that subverts your expectations more than Game of Thrones Season 8. This turns that narrative on its head because in today's story, a YouTuber was the victim of a scam and lost about $1 million in pursuit of a dream. This is the story of how a friend of mine named Oompaville was schmeckeldorfed out of a million clams by a greasy worm named Jake. Oompaville just posted a beautifully made documentary going over the entire situation, so I highly recommend checking that out for the full story. Basically, Oompaville embarked on a journey to fulfill a dream of starting his own candy company called Sour Boys, and along the way got into bed with a bad demon named Jake, who hosed $1 million out of him in a big, disgusting scam. And this is something that I actually have a close personal connection to because I was actually very much updated on his company, Sour Boys, over the last year and a half. Last January of 2022, Oompaville talked to me about his candy company, and I was super excited by it. Oompaville was glowing, blushing in the cheeks every time he'd talk about it. It was like he was going to prom every single day when I'd ask about the candy company. And it made me super happy to see that from him. Just a really cool project and venture taken by someone that was very passionate about the product. And I mentioned this in the stream clips I want to show a little bit later, but I'll mention it here too. I'd actually tried the candy, well, me and my friends had all tried the candy by complete accident. It was sent to our P.O. box like 2 years ago or something like that. And we were eating it during a Moist Esports watch party and just fucking loving it. And we had no idea it was his. It wasn't until much later that we learned that Sour Boys that we were eating was Oompaville's. So it was a product that I had already liked without ever even knowing it was his. So it was top quality. And I eventually was told by Oompa that he was unfortunately used like a fucking fleshlight by a scammer and lost tons and tons of money, and that he may be making a video on it. And now that video is finally out, so I'd like to talk about it here today because it is tragic. Now, I want to make it clear that this doesn't mean that Sour Boys is dead and buried. According to Oompaville, they are still pursuing a full launch, and it is apparently in a very good place, so that should be on the horizon at some point. But this is a massive $1 million hiccup. That's a hiccup that could put you in an early grave, honestly. Losing that amount of money to a scammer is nothing shy of an absolute asteroid hitting your world. But Oompa and his family have persevered and are still planning on launching Sour Boys in a big way. Sour Boys is started by Oompaville, but he has hired like most of his family to do it with him, as well as other people on payroll. So it is a huge undertaking, and God willing, he's not been scammed by his family next. It should come out at some point. But anyway, let me explain what the scam was and how he lost so much money over the course of starting this business. In a nutshell, Oompa launching a candy company. It's actually candy that I had before by accident, like I didn't know it was his. You might remember during our early Moist Esports watch parties, we were all eating a bunch of like sour candy. That was his candy. We didn't know it. Like it actually slapped. And those were like, I guess, prototypes that he did like a promotional for that we got. And fast forward over the last year and a half or so, I don't remember how long it's been now, but he's been trying to launch that candy company in a bigger way, so he's upped the production, got a warehouse, and he got a big machine in order to really be able to pump out volume and scale. Turns out the person who supposedly built the machine and shipped him the machine was a giant fucking scammer who also happened to be a friend of his. Not like a best friend, but a close enough friend where it would be the ultimate betrayal to even consider a scam. So basically, the machine that he bought under the assumption that it was built by his friend, serviced by his friend's friend, was all a complete lie. What it was he bought the machine from China and upcharged Oompa like fucking 3 or 4x what it was actually valued at. So in total, he's out $1 million. Would have been more too. He was supposed to send an additional like 70 grand to the scammer, but he had like a come to Jesus moment about it being fishy. And yeah. He is still planning on launching the candy company. He says it's in a good spot, but he did lose $1 million over the course of this journey because of that scammer that was his friend. When you watch the video, I think it becomes pretty clear how anyone would have fallen for this. Like, there was so much communication. The person was, for the most part, reputable. It was a friend, trustworthy, so you always give them the benefit of the doubt in the first place. Oompa bent over backwards to pay wages and accommodate in order to get everything, situated, getting everything serviced, having a maintenance team, doing pretty much everything by the book. But it just turns out it was all a complete fucking lie. Even if it wasn't a scam, he'd be at $1 million. Yeah, but he'd have a company to show for it. Right now, he still has to keep building in order to get that ready. He says he is close and it's in a good spot, but that $1 million, assuming it didn't go to a scammer, would have helped launch the company and they would have already been in production. Well, and also, another thing that I think is worth mentioning, the machine that he did get that came from China that he was told was built by his friend and all them, the machine was quoted on the receipt as $143,000. Meanwhile, Oompa paid like 700 grand. So he also wouldn't have been out $1 million and he would have also been in production by now. Even if it was your friend, wouldn't you look up how much the machine may be going for? Well, he wasn't buying a pre-built machine. The whole reason that he was going to his friend for this was to produce that machine, to make that machine. It wasn't supposed to be like a pre-built machine. So where would you even go to get information on that or see other competitive quotes when this is supposed to be like basically a bespoke deal here? It wasn't $1 million for the machine. He lost $1 million over time by getting the machine and paying the guy and everything. Yep. He said $700,000 to the actual scammer, and then over the course of like wages and other expenses, came out to around $1 million in the shitter. Should have consulted me. Easy. True. He should have went to you. He should have been in Twitch chat just looking for the experts. You would have sniffed it out. Just go to Ask Reddit for advice. Where all sane people go, yeah. Why not ask a specialist about this before paying? The guy was a fucking specialist. Well, was supposed to be a specialist. And I guess in a way he was with scamming. Like, I don't know who else he was supposed to find. Like, Willy Wonka? Like, it's a hard thing to find people for that. Can he do something to press charges, or is it out of his control? Oh, they could absolutely press charges. 100%. Now, I don't know how hard they're going to go on that, but yeah, you can't just scam someone out of $700,000 for labor you didn't do and a completely false pretense on the whole situation, yeah. They could absolutely sue, and should sue. Can't sue if you can't be served. That's true. You gotta be real elusive. Just hide in the shadows and wear a disguise like glasses and a mustache. That's kind of the general overview of what happened. Again, just to give you the bullet points. Oompaville wanting to start the candy company, eventually realizing that if he wants to scale and keep things interesting, they're going to need to produce the candy themselves. Thus, they're going to need an actual machine. Thus, they're going to need an industrial engineer who knows what they're doing and can make the machine for them. He finds Jake. He hires Jake. He pays Jake up to $700,000 under the assumption that he is making this machine himself, specifically for the purpose of the Sour Boys candy production. With tons and tons of delays and a lot of very odd circumstances and things that happen throughout this multiple year venture, he learns that the machine that he eventually does get from Jake's shop is not a machine that Jake or anyone that works for Jake built. It was a machine that Jake purchased from China for $140,000 and was sold to Oompaville for significantly more than $140,000. And since Jake and no one on his team built it, no one knew how to really service this machine. So when eventually Oompaville did have someone that knew Jake come out to help, that person, his name is Will, did not know how to actually work on the machine. Thus, they were at a complete standstill. It was gridlock. There wasn't a whole lot to be done. They realized then, when Will got there, that they never built that machine. That machine was purchased from China, and everything Jake had been saying, everything Jake had claimed that he was doing was all a blatant lie at the expense of Oompaville's financial security. $1 million over the course of a few years, and he does still have a machine, but has to retrofit that machine now, completely change it around in order to actually work for the candy that he is producing. that's kind of the whole situation in a nutshell. There's a lot more moving parts in between there. He went in with both feet. He fucking cannonballed into the big business pool here. In the video, he talks about how he had a brief time of homelessness because he put like so much into this. He was like living out of the warehouse. It's a very like actually concerning story, but Oompa tells it with a smile on his face. But hearing that, I'm like, Jesus Christ, that was like reckless and scary. But you know, things are working out kind of, though it would have been a lot smoother had he never met Jake and instead found a different engineer. But you know, that's water under the bridge now. Hopefully Jake will face real punishment for this scam. This is not something that's like, you know, like, oh, that's what a goofball, Jake, you got us. Darn. This is absolutely a needs to be in jail, long prison sentence type of situation for this guy. That's an unforgivable thing to do. So yeah, that's kind of the bare bones of the story. I highly encourage you watch the entire documentary if you want to see like the nitty-gritty of everything that went on throughout this entire journey. It's wild and sad. Him Oompaville and his family have like a really good attitude about everything somehow, which is, you know, hats off to them. I don't know how they maintain like positivity in the face of $1 million fucking scam like that, but good on them. I'm wishing them nothing but the best. I hope Sour Boys does very well. And yeah, I just wanted to talk about this a little bit because this is a very rare instance of a YouTuber being the victim of a scam. So yeah, that's really about it. So yeah.